Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of the Fit and Well podcast. As you know, Angela Wood, she is with the Flex Center, and we are pleased to welcome today Audra Sherman, who is the head coach of Ontario Tech's women's soccer team. And our topic of the day today is going to be intuition. We all kind of thought this was a very interesting thing to talk about today because it is something that we all experience, not only of ourselves, but kind of as human beings. You know, we're all familiar with gut feelings, and it just seems to be an experience that regardless of race, ethnicity, spiritual beliefs, or absence of kind of spiritual like beliefs, gut feelings are something that, you know, across humanity is kind of like a given. And that's going to be our topic today. And so I want to just open up and even ask our guest Audra, what you think, or what is your experience with gut feelings, and kind of what do they mean to you?
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me on. So I think as I get older and how I kind of grow in my career and try to kind of figure out, you know, life work balance and just everything that's going on in the world right now, I'm starting to see that not all the decisions that I should be making should be based on my mind, right? And so I started to really tap into, I'm getting even a stronger kind of gut feeling. I find as I get older, I'm when I do listen to my gut feeling, it's always right. And so I think it's just intriguing because I want to continue making those right decisions. So it's putting the time and effort into really kind of enhancing it, and how do I do it? So, and that's what I'm kind of looking at kind of doing, is how do I find that balance between, yes, there's logic in your mind, and then there's your gut feeling, your inner voice, right? And then how do you know it's really your inner voice, or it's your mind that's your inner? So that's that balance. And so that's kind of it's kind of interesting, or maybe it was aligned that, you know, guys reach out to me to discuss intuition, because that is a major focal point in the last year or so of mine, and really something I want to tap into.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of awesome things there, Audra, and especially the idea of balancing kind of gut feelings and intuitions with our logic, with our intelligence, right? Because oftentimes, arguably in this Western society that we live in, so much emphasis is based on, you know, education and logic and being rational and, you know, and science, which is all awesome, amazing, necessary stuff. But there's this part of life, there's this part of us that can, you know, is like immensely knowledgeable, but like we don't always know why. We just know that something is calling us, something's telling us something, or something's screaming, hey, like look over here, or do this thing, you know, even if it's something, you know, if I think of examples in my life, driving home, like I have my route that I usually take, or, you know, I have options. Some days I just kind of feel like driving a different way. And so I'll listen to that. It's kind of like my gut telling me, you know, maybe mix things up, do something differently. But I think there's a lot of like wisdom and knowledge in these gut feelings that we have. And just to quickly touch on that piece around balancing, you know, gut feelings and say knowledge, Alfred Adler, he was a pioneer of psychotherapy and psychology, and psychotherapy, psychology, and psychiatry. I'm trying to think of the three P's. And yeah, he had a saying that listen to your heart, but take your brain with you. So I think he kind of understood the value of both, of just, you know, not to ignore these gut feelings and what your heart or what you feel called to do, but like listen to those things, but also marry that, do that with, you know, with your intelligence, like how, you know, with things that you've already learned, with life experiences and lessons you've already learned, I think. And so I think it was just a really interesting concept. And yeah, Ange, what are your thoughts?
I was thinking, as you mentioned, Audra, about as you get older, how you're listening to your intuition more. And I was thinking about what first came to mind was a few of my friends who I feel like as they get older, they're a bit more, I shouldn't say paralyzed by decision making, but they find it more challenging because they have that much more experience, because, well, this happened in the past, because, you know, now they've got so much information with which to make a decision. And I think but I think as you were mentioning, that draws back to thinking too much about it and what are you feeling. When I was preparing for today's podcast, a lot of what I was reading was talking about we don't spend enough time just listening to ourselves and being still and being quiet. And your body we can learn so much from it if we'll just give it the time and the appreciation that it deserves. Just sit and listen to those feelings and what are they, and is it sound and where is it coming from? And yeah, so I think that really resonated with me, and I think I'll share that with a couple of friends I know that they have such a hard time making a decision because they don't want to be wrong. That I think there's spending too much time putting too much information into it and not really feeling kind of whatever that decision is. And sometimes it's not even big things, it's like little things like buying a dress or some window treatments for their house, and they're like, oh my gosh, I just don't know which one. So it's funny how people can get paralyzed by that too. And I think, as you said, if we would just stop and listen to our bodies, and like you said, Jamie, too, let your heart lead, but take your brain with you. It's a good saying.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's where the science part of that comes in. And again, I can't give you exact facts and stuff, but I've been obviously looking into this quite a bit. And there's a lot of studies now coming out that the conscious mind, that we connect with the patterns, and there's only a certain amount of information, stimuli that we could take in during the day. So our subconscious mind is actually flooded. So we could see patterns. Maybe our conscious mind is not picking them up and processing them, but the subconscious mind is constantly working, constantly taking these patterns, right? So it's important, Angela, like you said, is to tap into those, sit with it, meditate, let the mind ease, be quiet, because your subconscious, that allows your subconscious mind to start to process and then become more aware and conscious of those thoughts and those patterns, because there are patterns in life that we don't always recognize, but our mind is always pattern based. We're looking for, but then we put meaning to those patterns. So let's say I had a bad experience, right? And the moment I recognize some patterns, I then put those patterns right away with that meaning of the past. So yeah, sometimes that's good, but sometimes you're then thinking from your conscious mind, your conditioned mind, kind of maybe the ego, the protection, the fear, or maybe those patterns, you can't understand them. You don't understand why you have this really big, strong feeling to want to go and do this, that urge. And I get those urges so intensely where as little as I'm about to walk out the house and I have this urge to take, I don't know, like a glass of water, like a bottle water. And I'm like, why? Logically, I'm not going out. I'm not doing this and that. But I have this urge to do something. And the times where I don't follow those urges, I end up needing that bottle of water or something. But when I do, all of a sudden, I need it. And it's such an intense urge and deep feeling that now I've let that go. And I'm like, I am going to go with it. But it's not to be completely impulsive, because there is some logic to it, right? So is that urge logical as well? Not doing something absolutely crazy, right? So that's that balance too, right? But definitely sitting with yourself, because your subconscious mind you're gathering that information throughout the day, right? And is constantly trying to process.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny when it comes up too, because Ange, you brought up window cleanings, and I thought of this example recently when, for my own home, my own home, and I think it was a water filtration system, because where I live, I'm on a well, and I was calling and getting quotes and looking at different companies, and I ended up going with the company that my gut told me, because there was kind of one that was really well rated, but really I don't know, it didn't feel right. And then there was one that was a lot cheaper but still had kind of some good reviews online, but it still didn't feel right. But there's kind of this one in the middle, the third one, and I felt like this was the one. My gut was just saying, go with this one. And so I went with it. I mean, everything's been great to date, but the installation went perfectly. They have a great no interest payment plan. So all these perks and all these, I guess, good things came out of it. And not to say that might not have happened with those other companies, but just random, maybe not everyday life events, but common things in life where these gut feelings can come up. And something as simple as choosing window clean, or who's going to clean my windows or treat my windows, who's going to install my water filtration system. So there's so many opportunities and times when, yeah, these gut feelings can come up in life.
It's so right when you were speaking about that, I thought of so when I was younger, I was going through the whole process of picking a university, right? And I had some offers, different schools, and at that time I wasn't academically eligible, right? So I was getting offers, scholarships, and I decided to go in the States, and I decided so I visited every school and to kind of get a feel. And I went to actually Clemson, South Carolina. And I was there on my visit. And when I came home, the first thing I said to my parents was, you know, what if, like, if I go there, like, could I transfer? Right. And I had this feeling. And so all the other schools had, at that time, that was a full ride. The other ones weren't sure because I wasn't eligible. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pick it because, you know, yes, it was great. It was a great school, and everything was on paper perfect. But I knew at that moment that I will go, but what if I have to transfer, right? And so I just had this feeling, and sure enough, after 2 years, I transferred. And then when I went to Hofstra, I knew the moment I got there, it was feeling right. So there's that balance of knowing sometimes the situation's not right, but you need to do it. And then, but also being okay with kind of what your intuition's saying, right? So now when I speak to the players that I'm recruiting, that's the thing I always say to them when they're looking at different schools or parents talk to me, how do you know, how do we pick? It's do your research, right? Get your information, do exactly what you did with, you know, trying to find like for windows and the carpets and stuff like that. Do your research, get your information. But at the end, I always say, what do you feel when you're there? What feels right the most? Like what company feels that it's, that you have that little connection with, that little difference, whether it's a feeling or thought, whatever it is, there is one that always stands out a bit more. So I always say, go with your gut feeling. So the school that makes you feel the best, and then you make the decision that maybe you have to give up certain things, but this feels right, or I'll do this for this later, right? And that's kind of been a big part of how I kind of go about my coaching as well, and helping others kind of guide themselves and seemingly big life decisions, even though I always tell them it's only 4 or 5 years of your life. There's a lot more going on, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. I somewhat recently, I guess, did a webinar for Fit for Sport, Vicky, or Angie. I know you know Vicky from Fit for Sport. And it was part of it was to do with intuition and how that can often help to boost our wellness. And so I think that kind of is parallel to some of the things you were touching on there, Audra. And in that group discussion within that webinar, a lot of the participants, what they were saying about their intuition was, as you said earlier, they really learned to trust it and listen to it more later on in life. And the consensus came out to be, it's just how accurate it proved to be through all sorts of times where people listened to it and it was right, but also the times where they didn't listen to it and something kind of like either went wrong or didn't turn out the way, or, you know, a lot of times what was brought up was in a relationship that had this gut feeling about, you know, this guy or this girl, this partner, you know, on paper, everything seemed great, but maybe there was something there that felt off. So they kind of, you know, dated them or married them anyways. And then it didn't turn out as maybe they had planned. And so in reflecting, a lot of people kind of realized, again, I think as they grow older, it's just there's a level of trust that can be held within our intuition because it can so often guide us in the right direction. And maybe a question I want to throw out to you two is, and we've kind of touched on it, but what do you think makes it difficult to listen to our intuition?
I would say I think sometimes we just we don't trust ourselves as much as we should. I think if you talk about relationships, then, well, I've chosen some bad partners in the past. I've made some bad decisions. So obviously I'm not a good decision maker. So, but as you said, in those situations where we're necessarily listening to our intuition, have we taken in all that information, as we mentioned earlier, Audra, sitting quietly with ourselves, really thinking, being aware of something doesn't feel right. If you don't give yourself that chance to have that time and that awareness, then I think we can be led down a different path for sure.
Yeah, I think kids actually have greater intuition than us, right? Like, because they're more instinctive, right? They're not conditioned. They're not, they haven't gone through, they're not kind of jaded in a way. They are not putting so much meaning. They literally live in the moment. And so there's a tendency for adults to live in the past and the future and not the present. And so when you're not living in the present and you're not actually like being aware and focus on the situation in front of you, right? You're reacting. It's a reaction base. It's either based on igniting the ego, right, or overthinking and putting meaning, and then actually sometimes bringing in things that are not even present, right? So then those thoughts get distorted. Then the feelings, and then that's where you have a hard time, is that kind of inner battle of, is it my inner mind, inner voice, like what is it, right? And I think that's what people struggle with is, am I creating this? Am I talking myself out of it, talking myself into it? Like, so what is it? So I think it's those practices of eating healthy, sleeping well, hydrating, meditation, being aware, and really, and when you say sitting with yourself, it's really kind of sitting with, like, when you're questioning yourself, like, if your mind keeps on going to the negative, like this person does this, this, and that, and you question it, but it always is coming back and you feel it in your stomach, you logically could put it together, then I think you have your answer, right? But then there's times where in your gut, it feels right, but you notice patterns in yourself, what you have a tendency of doing. And if you're able to minimize your patterns and those negative or those fear-based traits that you have or conditioning, and then see the person in the present, I think that's where you see a clear awareness for your actions and for the person. And I think that's where you get whether or not that person, that relationship or whatnot is for you in that situation, right? It's just my opinion on that, but.
Mm-hmm. As you were talking, I was thinking, Audra, that I've been reading this book on horse behavior, equine behavior, and one of the passages that I was reading, which I found really fascinating, they were talking about how horses just are, they just be, and they're talking about their presence. So if they're in the field grazing and then they sense a predator, then they will flee, make sure they're safe, and then they'll keep enjoying that pasture and grazing. They're not worried about, why did God create predators in the first place, and am I still safe here? They're not worried, but they're so also in tune with each other and themselves that they'll notice, one of their paddock mates, their ears turn, so they notice a little flinch in one of their muscles. Okay, something's kind of up, so I'll be aware, but I'm still going to continue what I'm doing. They don't label, well, that was a really terrible experience, I'm never going back to that paddock again, or that field, or whatever. And that's, as you were saying too, we label things as good or bad sometimes too, and sometimes they just are. They're just experiences. So the more that we label things too, and we stay in that negative or keep going back there, that can also alter kind of how we perceive things and how we think about things too.
Yeah, that's massive actually, because where's our state of mind? So if we're in a negative state of mind, everything in front of us, we're going to perceive as a negative, right? So we have a choice. And then if we're in a positive state of mind, a relaxed, calm, clear, we're going to see the good. Like in coaching, I could watch a game, and if I'm in a negative state of mind, if I'm frustrated, I'm tired, it's been a long season, I'm going to pick out all the bad things. But if I'm in a place of, okay, I'm looking for long-term, I'm looking for like growth and team collectiveness, I'm going to pick out the positives and find those teaching moments, right? But when it comes to actual danger, right, our mind, we are built to survive, right? So, but that's not something that we consciously have to deal with. Subconsciously, everything, like if we're in absolute danger, our body is going to get into that flight, fight, and freeze mode, right? And we'll be like those horses. we'll know instinctively what to do in a dangerous situation, right? But it's our minds that create all these other issues, right? And when we're in that danger, we will have that clarity. We will know how to flee. We'll do all that, right? But most people are not day to day. We're not in that dangerous situation, right? So we label and put meaning to everything, but it's how we do it. So negative mindset, we will label it, and it's perception, right? And then we build on it, and then we find reasons or facts to back up what we're seeing, what we're feeling, and we justify it, right? And then it becomes this complete spiral, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
when you're in that negative.
Go ahead, Ange.
No, I was just saying, especially when you're in that negative headspace, then everything, you've talked to those people that are like, oh, well, how about this? Well, that's not going to work. Well, what about, well, that's not going to work. Okay. Now what?
And it happens then, because like, then you change the energy, right? So if you're always negative, and I'm coming to, so I support you, I meet you at your place, and I understand where you're at, and I'm suggesting some ways to change your mindset and kind of help you, and you keep saying, well, no. Well, where do you think my energy is going to go? So I'm either going to go down with you, and I'm going to have that same energy and hit at the same level, and now we're on the same vibration, or I'm going to protect my vibration, my energy, and I'm going to leave the situation, which leaves then this justification in that person's negative state of mind. Well, everyone always leaves then, right? And so there's certain things that we do have control of and stuff we don't, right? And I think that's the thing is, if you have control of choice and perception and how you want to see things, right? And you have a choice to change your energy. So if you're in positive energy, right, and your vibration is high, you're attracting those type of people, because people want to be at the same energy level, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things that I read this morning too, is, being really conscious about who you're spending your time with, who you're hanging out with, because it's very, like you said, it's very contagious. Those feelings can draw you one way or the other, either down that rabbit hole spiral or towards, like you said, to that positive energy. It is infectious, both of them.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, all amazing things that, like, when listening to you two talk, and everything is like just resonating with me, and like not only what I already kind of think and feel and believe around intuition, but like expanding and growing on that. It's just all sounding like really, really good to me anyways. And to add to this piece of the conversation, and again, kind of touched on it a little bit already, the idea of fear and how difficult it can be to separate, when, for instance, let's say we have a decision to be made, and through past experiences or through things that we've seen and heard, maybe on the news or whatever, often a lot of people live with a lot of fear, especially in today's world with COVID and, all the, last year was just like a complete, whatever you want to call it, but like it was a year that, everyone's going to remember, good, bad, or otherwise. But a lot, look to the media, look to social media, a lot of the narratives were completely fear-based, and be concerned, be worried, take precautions and be safe, which again, necessary to some extent. But for me, if I break it down, a lot of it really wasn't encouraging or positive. It was fostering this sense of like things to be scared of, things to always be cautious of. And unfortunately, we don't always have that ability to be like horses and just live in the moment. And so I just feel like the more we accumulate, the more we listen to the news, the more we listen to the COVID numbers and things like that, again, important to some extent. But if that is all or a lot of what we're taking in, we're not fostering a healthy mindset. We're not fostering, the warm and fuzzies to feel good about life and other people and relationships. It's not really what's focused on in a lot of media and news today. And so I just think this element of fear really can get in the way of us trusting ourselves, trusting what our bodies are telling us, because it's almost like intuition is, we don't really, I don't think we really know where it comes from. Is it part of our mind? I think, yes, Audrey, you're absolutely right. And things I've read, it's probably a collection of very conscious and unconscious things that we're always taking in and accumulating to help us, with our even with our mindset and in terms of how we just naturally respond to things. But it is this very innate, visceral part of human experience, and it's like, I guess, yeah, we can make choices to do things that can help us trust ourselves, or or if we just are constantly surrounded by things that put us in fear and worry and concern, I don't think that's good for our intuition, but let alone our wellness. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, if you notice with the media, like for media to kind of, if we break down the objectives and agenda of everything in life, so the media is based on like ratings and getting reaction. So and it's always the polars of like, it has to be so big and to get a reaction, to get like newsworthy, it's got to be either left or right, or like big disaster, like, so let's over exaggerate it, or like make it so hyped and so amazing. So these like deep emotions, right? This, like, for it to get noticed, it has to be some deep emotional reaction, right? So then you play these two polarizing emotions, or like, and in the US right now, it's the left, right, like these total opposite, like ways of living your life and politically, how your stance is. And so where we're trying to find in that present and this balance is literally the middle. But it's very rare that you could live neutral, right? Everyone's saying you have to be this, you have to be that. Well, I don't know that you have to be this or you have to be that. I could understand you and empathize with you. I could see your side, and I have my beliefs, and I could find that neutral place in living, right? And I think, but that doesn't work to how we structured our world, right? That we are forced to have big reactions, right? And we are emotional beings, right? But I think as we kind of use our logic of understanding the agenda, the purpose behind everything that reacts us. So if we have a strong reaction of fear, look into that, right? But don't only look in yourself, understand the other person's side, right? Why is the news heightening all the numbers in coronavirus? Well, there is logic to it, because there's a fear that they're going to overload. Like, they're thinking of what could happen if, too many people get it and they cannot offer like the medical treatment for it, right? It's really isn't, but it's used to spark some fear so that you stay at home, right? So I think it's then you being able to choose and pick, what you want to kind of listen to and how much. So if you're constantly watching the news, negative, of course you're going to be overloaded. So and then don't completely not listen to it. So it's finding that balance, right? And knowing yourself, what your barrel is, if it's overflowing, if it's getting too close, because if it starts to get too high up there and starts to overflow, you're in a state of panic now, right? Protection. And your body will get in that protection, right? So then you'll start rejecting everything. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And maybe to shift gears a little bit. Oh, before we shift gears, Anne, I see that you wanted to maybe share something there.
No, go for it.
Yeah, no, Audra, so, before we started the podcast today, we had a little chit chat, and I was just curious if you wanted to maybe share the side of intuition and gut feelings that can be really positive, that can, are nice things that can be brought into our lives from listening to our intuition. I know you kind of started sharing a little bit about intuition and even kind of coming to OnTech. I didn't get to hear a lot about it, but yeah, just curious if you wanted to maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I was living in Ottawa for about 13 years. And so I'm originally from Montreal, and I went to school in the States. I kind of traveled a lot, and then I found myself in Ottawa. It was close to my family. It's Canada. I loved it. And so I was actually working for a professional organization, and professional and sport and entertainment. So I was working with the Ottawa Fury, which sports men's soccer team, and I was running the women's stuff and doing player development. And then we had the CFL, the Red Blacks, and we had the stadium and our hockey team. So it's like great environment. And so so during the time I was there for about 6 years, and stuff happened in my personal life, and I was kind of in this like crazy place. And then a month after, I found out our soccer team folded. We weren't going to get the sanctioning, and so I had a choice: either stay there, and shift into another part of the organization, or kind of move on. And at that time, it was like my whole life kind of like was thrown up in the air completely, and I had like I didn't know what to do, but it was actually the clearest I've ever been in my life, the calmest. So it was a state of like stress and like probably the hardest times I had to be in my life, but yet the calmest and clearest. And so I didn't know, it was very hard to find university jobs in Canada. So I traveled for a bit, and I don't know what happened. I have a stepson, and he got an opportunity to try out for York 9 here in Toronto, and we went to the tryouts, and through there I reconnected with some people, and he then got an opportunity at York University, which connected to me connecting with Ontario Tech, and I applied for the job. And it was weird how everything kind of aligned. And I knew, like, although my mind was, I'm going to move, but I'm not going to move to Toronto. I was just going to kind of see what happens. It perfectly aligned where then, my house sold within like a day. And it was kind of this feeling of everything was meant to be, and it was right. So where it should have been hard decisions to completely alter my whole life and take myself and my stepson to Ontario, like to Toronto, and get to Ontario Tech, I should have overthought it. Like 13 years, sell your house, leave the company you were with. It was complete different, like everything was different. And I never thought anything other than this is the right decision. And I can't explain it. I just knew because it was so easy. Mm-hmm. And it aligned for both of us completely. So I guess to understand is actually my husband passed away in September and then lost a job in October. And then it kind of, in a state of that confusion, completely everything made sense because I lived in the present moment and I was able to see what was in front of me, the opportunities, and I instinctively knew what the choices were. And it was the best decision made because despite COVID, like it's the right environment, the right culture, everything, right? So that's where my belief is. If you're clear-minded and even state of trauma or like really hard decisions, right? Like you do know it will, your intuition, what's inside of you will flow to where you're meant to be in life. Like that's my proof because I went through it that it does happen. Definitely.
It's interesting too that you can say, so that was probably the if not one of the toughest times of your life. And that was the moment that you had clarity, which is so, and people would think that would be the opposite. Your mind would be foggy and flooded with so much emotion that it's hard to think clearly. And it's interesting to hear that the opposite can happen again. And you knew that, you listened to yourself and were able to make that decision, which is so awesome. And are you a believer too, Audra, that, I don't know, whatever was put out to the universe almost, you were just open to it. So if you were stuck in that negative headspace, no, I can turn that down. There's no way I'm moving right now. I can't uproot my stepson. I can't do this. I can't do that. You wouldn't have been open to it, what kind of was being brought to you.
100%. So prior to that, I was kind of stuck there with like, I love the organization, but there is a glass ceiling kind of for women in sport here as well. And so you kind of, when you're in the game for a long time, you see there's not a lot of opportunities. So you kind of like, well, what is there, right? So not only really you can't see it, there really is not a lot of options. Then you couple it with now like, one of those options kind of fall away, like you get in that, like, what's the point of this? Should I really be in here? So I was kind of there before all this happened, like within the year before, where I was like, I need to make a move and kind of follow what I want to do, which would require me moving to the US or somewhere else. I didn't see it in Canada. And, but opportunities did come to me. Actually, a lot of opportunities in that year were coming to me, but because I was in a really burnt out type of place, I was negative mindset. I knew I was getting opportunities because I was always, I put myself in situations, right? I got my national A, I did the right things. So I always had opportunities, but because I created them, but in that time frame when my mind was so negative, I couldn't take those opportunities. I recognized they were there, but they weren't good enough. I made the excuses. I said this. I picked out all like, well, I don't want to move because of this. The house. And so I talked my way out of it. Or maybe even people came to me to get a feel. Maybe, we'll bring you in because we've heard this and that. And maybe in my negative state of mind, they didn't pursue it, right? So 100%, I think definitely. And I kind of knew that right away, that in that moment, my life needed to change. I was forced. I had a choice. I could stay somewhere and, like live with what was happening, or I have a chance to do everything that people tell you not to do after a loss. And that was 2 losses, right? And it was, don't move, don't travel, don't make big life decisions, don't change your job. So I traveled, I sold my house, and I started a new job. And it made sense to do that because the first decision I made was put myself in the right mindset. And so I was lucky because I had a lot of support around me. Family, even the job at OSEG, they were so supportive. The culture there was unbelievable. They were people, and that helped too, right? So it instantly put me in the right mindset. And I was lucky because I had a community, and I chose to have a positive in a negative or a hard time in my life. And yeah, 100%, that's what it is. It's a choice, right? It's a choice to see things positively or negatively. And it does, it changes your life and your course, for sure.
I think really speaks to the power and importance of like community and connection and having support. So, when life is really tough and rough, having these things that benefit and support us kind of sound like Audra kind of really helped you to hone in on that trust, on you listening to yourself, to maybe find some calm and silence in and amongst the storm or fury of things going on all around you. But yeah, that's an incredible story of just like knowing what's good for you. Sure, there's or I guess one of my favorite sort of figures of speech or sayings is that, there's no cookie cutters in life. There's no cookie cutters in wellness and health and exercise and diet and nutrition. But, you seem to know that, yes, there's this idea, maybe typical rules that apply to a lot of people. Don't sell your house. Don't move. Don't do da. But you knew, based on when you kind of like listen to yourself, this is what's good for me. This is kind of what I need right now. You followed it. Like you said, there was alignment. The stars aligned, and you seem very happy where I think you said you're where maybe you need to be.
Yeah. And you know what, there was other options. Like, I was looking at jobs in Hawaii, and there's certain things that happened, but I knew when I went to interviews, I knew, because I also was looking, as I was leaving OSEG, I was talking to our head of HR, and she was saying, culture, this is who you are. You're a culture-based person. So that's where the logic and intuition happens as well. So I was pulling my experiences and the patterns, and then knowing myself. So that kind of helped the alignment as well, right? And it was also, this is another crazy part of this whole story was so I came in here, and it was right away in lockdown. So my brother lives in Toronto, right? And so I was staying at his place with my stepson, and I'm looking for places to live, right? And I know in my head what I want. And what I wanted probably couldn't be found for the price, and Toronto was crazy. And so I went back to Montreal in the summer, and I'm sleeping, and also I wake up at 3 a.m. and I start looking on the apps again, and it was just posted, and the perfect place for me. I happened to wake up in that moment. Anyways, I wrote them, and now I'm living in that place now. And I think it's because I had such a clear vision what I wanted, right? And I didn't work in a state of panic or fear. I gave myself that time. And then, so I don't know, it just, once again, just aligned. But I knew, like, I didn't have to overthink and ask so many questions. I knew right away. And I think that's the thing, is when you know what you want, you know what feels right, that helps with the instinct, that intuition of alignment as well. So there's still the logic there, right? But it's when you're fuzzy, when your mind's not right, that's where you could get pulled either way, right? And then get kind of in that free zone.
Mm-hmm.
So Audra, do you have any suggestions for somebody? I'm just thinking of, especially right now, you know, reading so much about mental health and how, you know, I think I read yesterday, 21% of Canadians would say classify their mental health as bad or very bad. And we're talking about our perception and our perspective being choice. So for somebody that's right now feeling stuck in that negative space, because look at what's going on in the States, look at COVID, I'm never going to get a chance to go back to school, I'm not great at online courses, and it keeps going and going. What's the first step for those people to kind of get out of that kind of rut or that negative headspace? What's even one thing that you would suggest that they could do?
I think there's just that acceptance and compassion for ourselves. I think because we're so centric on ourselves, we feel we're the only ones going through it. So everyone goes through different hard times, and things process differently in people. I think it's to talk about it, because I think the more that you open up and be honest and talk about it, you then share that with someone that you care about, and somebody that you trust. You want to share with people you trust, and then they'll open up and they'll share what they're feeling. And sometimes we hide it so much that we think we're the only ones going through it. So I think that's the first, is understand, like, accept that it's okay to feel like this. Like, yes, it is hard. It's really hard. Nothing's wrong with you. Like, you know, we're struggling, and maybe finding that connection and sharing with somebody else. I would say that would be the first. Yeah, and then I think for me, the first thing when I first went to the hospital, right? And I remember the consistent thing was take care of yourself. Eat, sleep, right? So if you eat and you sleep, right? And you take care of your body, you can make the right decisions. So I think those are some tangible things, is, are you eating right? Are you sleeping right? Are you hydrating? And then, so if you do the basic needs as a human, then you could deal with online learning, or, you know, can you control the media and what's happening in the world? We can't control that, but we can control how much we watch and how much social media, right? So I think it's empowering that you have choice as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I see your head shaking a lot or nodding a lot as a wellness coach there, Jamie.
Yeah, no, I think both of you have had amazing ideas and knowledge, and just sharing these personal experiences is just so enriching. And yeah, just another piece that I wanted to explore today is, let's say people are not sure about their intuition. You know, they have these gut feelings, but maybe they have a history, and I know I did at one point, a history of not listening to them, like choosing our logic and our rational brains over, you know, what our gut is telling us or what our intuition is telling us. So what are some things that maybe you know of or have done, or people, or of things that people might be able to do to start cultivating a trust, or just start making the decision to trust their guts and not their brains every single time?
Would you like to do that one?
No, go for it. I was going to jump back to to horses for a second, and only because we were just talking about this. I'm haven't been going to the barn due to COVID and still getting over my shoulder injury, but both my partner and I, we both go and we're used to do the night feeds, and we would say it was one of the only times throughout the whole week when we were there for probably 2 or 3 hours, twice a week, that we weren't thinking about anything else. We were just there. Like, I was feeding and watering and grooming and doing all of those things. And I think we all need that, what is that thing that's going to bring you some solace, some calm? When I spend time with my own dog, especially during the pandemic, it's been so amazing just to sit on the floor with her, and I'm petting her and I'm looking into her eyes, and I love her so much, and it's so simple. She doesn't require much of me. It's easy. It's just, yeah. And I don't know why I've been coming a lot to animals during the pandemic, but it's just, there's so many things that we can learn from animals. So like the horse reference that I made earlier about their behavior and just how calm they are and how they are present. Like, I just want you to pet me right now I get that feeling from my dog. So I think that for me brings a lot of, I don't know, it's just been really helpful. And it's been, I think, really highlighted for me what one of my values is, which is the value of that connection with people. I'm obviously missing my family and can't wait to hug my parents and have dinner with my sister and all that kind of stuff. But it's that connection and cultivating relationships with whoever, if it's animals or people or whatever. So for me, that's been kind of it's just the pandemic has just really reminded me about how important that really is in my life.
I think it's really spot on. Like, I was the same throughout everything that's happening. I found my connection with nature and animals as well. My first thing was actually to go horseback riding and start to, my instinct was to go and work, like volunteer. And I don't even know why. Like, I haven't a horseback ride since I was 10 years old. I used to do shows and stuff. But that was the first thing I thought of as a way to ease myself. And my dog as well. It's true. It's going back to the basics. It's releasing this expectation that we put on ourselves and others put on you, and finally letting go and be okay to just get up in the morning, feed yourself, do what you can, and not always have to overdo it, right? And animals don't really do that. All my dog does when she barks at me, she gets a little pushy. She wants to go for a long walk. And then maybe she wants to go to 10 walks a day, right? Then she's getting a little demanding. But it's just going to the basics, like not overstimulating yourself, and these expectations that we're in a pandemic, we have all this time, we have to achieve so much. I think that puts people in that kind of state of fear as well. And then I think it's a good time to listen to yourself. So if there's not so much going around, you can start to listen to yourself and trust, right? And so if you feel you're not in that place to, online does it great for you, because I think a lot of online courses you could do it at your own pace. So I think that's telling as well, right? Like, there's some stuff you cannot do it at your own pace. There's some structure, right? But this is a time where you have some flexibility to figure out what works best for you. How do you take care of yourself? How do you listen to yourself? And you'll make better decisions when you take care of your basic needs. It's not based off of expectations of others or fear, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think if I were to try to sum this up, it's like connecting with yourself, connecting with nature, connecting to the things that I think a lot of people in, the health, wellness, even sports industry would say, are important to our mental health, to our well-being, to having a clear, positive mindset. It's like connecting to these things that just are just so natural, in the world. Nature is obviously everywhere. We are who we are. And so why not connect with us? It's probably only going to do us good things. And so one thing I did want to mention in terms of if people wanted to try to build up this intuition on top of these awesome things that you guys already shared, is something that I had done a long time ago, even though I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, would be to take an intuitive drive or walk. I don't know if I've coined that, but that's what I call it. And I think I probably still have my G2, maybe I was 17 or 18, but I used to love driving, and I would just go wherever I kind of felt like going. So I'd come to a stop sign and I'd be like, oh, so and so lives over here, maybe I should go that way and pay a visit. But then that was kind of my mind saying this, but I'm like, I want to go right. So I would just go, and I eventually, through doing it more and more, I just drove around listening to wherever I wanted to go, wherever my kind of gut was guiding me. And I would end up in like North Toronto, and I had no idea where I was, and I had to call people like, hey, I'm at this intersection, help me get home. Or like way north of the city in like cottage country, to places I'd never been. But it was like, I whenever I got back, I just felt so like calm and so good, and just like I felt, and I couldn't describe it at the time, but I think looking back now and knowing what I know is like I was just tapping into and listening to me, and wherever that part of me wanted to go. So it was fostering and cultivating that trust, that sense of just listening to me. And yeah, I just thought it was a really interesting thing. So a recommendation that I would say to people is, if you want to start building trust and intuition, do something simple and easy. Like go for an intuitive walk or drive. Just go down whatever street you want to go down, whatever you kind of feel like, and obviously be safe about it. But yeah, there's a lot of, I think, value in that simple thing, being able to hone in on, recognize that trust and intuition, because it's not always easy to recognize, and then learning that it's safe. It's often one of the safest things for us to listen to.
Nice. And I think too, just to kind of sum up a little bit, for me, it would also be based on what you have both said, to also learn that it's okay to make mistakes. So if you do make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. As we were saying, there's no permanence in life in almost anything. We will all be happy. We will all be sad. We'll all be, trying to find that balance. But yeah, so if you listen to your intuition and it doesn't work out, then maybe, wasn't really your intuition that you were listening to, or more logic. And I think those things will kind of iron themselves out. And those situations like you had, Audra, where it was like, oh my gosh, I have such clarity. That's when I think we can learn a lot too. Like, what am I doing right now that's bringing me this clarity? And really diving into that and questioning ourselves, as we've talked about before, can really just heighten that awareness, so we can learn to trust our intuition even more so than maybe we do right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up today, Audra?
Yeah, I mean, I think we went to the basics and the simple. I think there's such value in simplicity. Like, just do the simple thing, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to not always be 100%, and it's okay to have good days. It's okay to have, bad days. It's okay to be up and down. Like, let's not just be so hard on ourselves, and have compassion for others and ourselves. And it's I think it's the not repeating it, right? Learning, right? As you said, Angela, it's, you make mistakes, you learn from it, you don't beat yourself up, do the simple thing. And if the simple thing's right, then you could test yourself a little more. If not, go back to the simple things. That's kind of where I would go there, and then find that clarity, and then, just try to live in the moment if you can, for sure.
Awesome. So I think on that positive and awesome note, I think we'll wrap up for today. Audra, thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure having you on here and listening to your wisdom and your input. Ange, as always, it was great. And stay fit and stay well, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Audra.